ABC Place and all the way into town. So traffic this morning is looking good. Musiwe na pressure.
Leo kama ulikuwa umeitwa meeting ya asubuhi ya interview 8 am, don't worry, don't panic. Oh yes. Let's take a look at the weather updates and see, according to the Met Department, weather for today, even for today night as well. For Nairobi, okay, memory reload. Nairobi, highs of 24 degrees Celsius. No rainfall for today, cloud and sunny intervals. In Mombasa, some light showers, highs of 30 degrees Celsius. In Kisumu, it's also going to be raining, highs of 28 degrees, lows of 17. Eldoret pia kutakuwa kunanyesha leo, highs of 22 degrees and lows of 13. In Nakuru hakuna mvua leo, some very nice kind of weather, highs of 24. In Nyeri, highs of 23. No rainfall today, but cloudy. That means it might be baridi shadidi. In Marsabit, highs of 26 and lows of 16. Let's take a look at what you're going to be expecting for the next 5 days from today. Rainfall is expected in some parts of the Highlands East, so do expect that getting into the weekend. Also intermittent cold and cloudy conditions over the parts of Highlands East and west of Rift Valley, southeastern lowlands and Rift Valley as well. And that is the weather for you. Getting into taking a look at the news diary this morning. So first off, you remember that whole public fundraising appeals bill. So it will be, that actually is meant to bar public and state officers from participating in Harambes. That is supposed to be published today. That is according to President William Ruto. We expect to see how that will be happening. Today is day 4 of the trial of suspected Kilifi County leader Paul Mackenzie. It enters day 4 today. Shanzo Principal Magistrate Leah Juma will continue listening to witnesses as well as survivors in all that ordeal that happened around last year. So the Principal Magistrate will then take a break for around 11 days and resume on the 22nd of July for that. Still in matters courts today, former Kenya Pipeline Company Managing Director Shem Ochuotho is expected to appear before the Milimani Anti-Corruption Court today. This is on matters allegations relating to irregular debt refinancing of around 2 billion cash shillings by AAA Capital Limited to KPC, which is the Kenya Pipeline Company management, that caused the company to incur losses of about 286 million Kenyan shillings. That and much more coming up in a news diary in our bulletins. Also plus reactions by, well, different cabinet secretaries as well as different leaders on all that cabinet dismissal. Let's take a look at Today in History.
On this day, more than 100 Nigerians were killed as they tried to collect petrol released after a fuel tanker tipped over and caught fire in Ahoada near the oil port of Harcourt.
All right, let's take a look at the dailies now. And on most of the front pages, they have images or pictures rather of all the CSs who were sent home yesterday by President William Ruto. But on the Standard, they've not wasted any space trying to show us who is no longer a CS. They just have an image of the president and what he says and the big title, People Power. There's no other story on the front page. Yeah. They've included an archived edition of the Standard, the one that they had the picture of the cabinet in at a meeting, yes.
Last week on Friday, actually.
Yes, and they dubbed it the Last Supper. Now they're telling us, yes, we told you.
We told you.
And that was the Last Supper. And after that, People Power. Cabinet acts. The country has been in turmoil for weeks after the youth rose to reject the finance bill and push for good governance. After the protest, the cabinet has been dissolved, with the president promising a broad-based and inclusive executive and corruption purge in government. With a cabinet of cronies and political backers, Gen Z and observers are watching on who will be dropped or brought on board as the country waits to see if he will keep his word. This story extensively covered on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. 8 pages. Sababu watu walifutwa kazi. People power. That's a Standard this Friday.
Ungeandika hapo in quotes Gen Z power pia. ndio feel
okay, sawa.
ndio ikuwe na hiyo uzito wake. That is the Standard. Tuangalie Daily Nation because we have the physical paper here, and just also skim through other headlines that are in there because, well, that conversation of why they had to fall is there. They say President William Ruto yesterday fired all but one of his cabinet secretaries as he once again yielded to pressure from young Kenyans who have protested against unpopular taxes and extravagance by officials in the face of economic hardships by the majority. And while he hopes the move will help cool the heat in the country, it will no longer be business as usual with his every step and decision under sharp scrutiny. We also have this on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Around 7 pages. Yes, we have a quote there by the president. It's one of those quotes that will be remembered. He is in his 10 years from now, will be saying today in history. This happened.
Oh yes.
And all the faces of those former CSs now. Yes.
Former.
Pale juu umeandika a new start. Only Prime CS Musalia survived purge even as the president promised more measures. Even the secretary to the cabinet also survived this purge.
It should be noted that yes, we do acknowledge that some of these people could possibly make a comeback when President Ruto reappoints or appoints a new cabinet. Some of them could, but as it is right now, wako nyumbani na wasiwe na haraka ya kutoka leo.
But then the eyes now are going to be on Parliament and see majini kipeleko National Assembly, what will happen there.
Question is, how dare Parliament be on recess during such a time? When cabinet has been fired, surely the National Assembly should be in place. You know, some things, anyway.
And that is the front page of Daily Nation. You can take a look at the back page and see other headlines. There's something interesting for travelers. It's a boon for travelers as ESC raises limit on untaxed personal items. So KRA in 2016 set the maximum duty collected on personal effects at 50,000 Kenyan shillings. The previous $500 previous value of personal effects that travelers could bring into Kenya without being taxed. That is on the back page. Other matters, audit criticizes shoddy work done to repair leaky roofs at GKI in 175 million cash shillings contract. Typically and naturally, we would be asking Kipchumba Murkomen what happened here. But now as a former CS,
you can't ask him.
I don't know now, I think now we're going to be asking the permanent principal secretary in Rhodes what is happening there at GKIA. But that is Daily Nation. Kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo,
afagia wote, habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Nasema katika hatua iliyotajwa kama ya kijasiri, rais atimua mawaziri ambao walihusishwa na ujeuri na ubadhirifu. Lakini wameka hapa ile, this is a recycle
bin.
Meaning that they could just be recycled back into cabinet. Siasa, Rais William Ruto waliwafuta kazi mawaziri wake wote kufuatia shinikizo kutoka kwa vijana ambao wamekuwa wakiandamana kupinga utawala wake. Habari kuu pale, na wanasema ni picha tu, wanaelezea nani yako kwenye picha hizi. Lakini pale juu habari zaidi, vidokezo zaidi, Raila njia panda kisiasa, anahitaji usaidizi wa serikali ili apate kiti cha AU na Gen Z hawatulii. Masuala ya Euro, Uingereza yanusia taji la Euro 2024. Three Lions kuvaana na Uhispania katika fainali Jumapili Julai 14. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa 20.
On to the next Business Daily. The big headline there is CEO bonuses of top NSE firms dip to 735 million Kenyan shillings. They say payments down 82 million Kenyan shillings on lower profits. The total dividend payout falls to 112.8 billion Kenyan shillings. This is a story we've been seeing from different CEOs on how the bonuses have been. Kama ya jana tunaangalia Safaricom CEO Peter Ndegwa.
But it tells you how the markets have been performing. If at all those CEOs are getting reduction in bonuses, means previously they've been doing well. So it tells you something about the markets.
Another headline, end of the road for cabinet of dollar millionaires. I love how people, or rather Business Daily has gone with that, dollar millionaires. This takes you back to when they were being vetted and they asked, how much are you worth? What's your net worth? And the kind of figures they were quoting was mind-blowing.
Yes. And you know, the discussion back then was the fact that maybe some of them are overquoting their wealth, so that in case as cabinet secretaries they manage to accumulate more, atasema, hey, but nikikuja nilikuwa na ita. So true. Probably right now, even if you go vetting them, yeah, but I told you that's what I had.
On the ticker, win for travelers as limit on untaxed personal items up. That story still on the back page of Daily Nation. They say the minimum value of personal effects that passengers can bring into Kenya without being taxed has been raised fourfold to $2,000. That's about 89,477 Kenyan shillings, up from $500. That was 64,887 Kenyan shillings. Some good news there. Other headlines, Kenya nets 43.9 billion Kenyan shillings in revenue from tax amnesty. And Equity narrows gap with Safaricom in profits race. That is the Business Daily in a nutshell. On to from BD to PD.
Good riddance. Wamekuja sana hata wabembelezi. Good riddance. Shown the door. Amidst the cries of Kenyans who lost their brave children for speaking against the insolence of this regime, President Ruto fires cabinet raising queries on his future at State House. Pages 2 and 6 of this paper have been, and you know, we were discussing what happened here. This image. Lonely at the top, Ruto retreats to face reality as he spoke and said, okay, fine, thank you, God bless Kenya. Akafunga yo tab. Akatembea peke yake. This door is very huge. And he walked alone. Now the problem is he had to open the door himself. Yani, by the way, State House sometimes. Ukipangeni, you can open the door from the other side. Ni communication tu, anambia amefika fungua. Nini? So he had to open the door, and yes, he looked very lonely. Everyone was asking, okay, so how come even his ADC wasn't there? He was, of course he was there, but this image of the president just walking alone says a lot, at least
because
captured that.
Typically, I remember even going to State House and covering some of these events, you'd have even the DP, there was that cabromance when they were walking and coming together.
Even the two guys who've been retained in cabinet probably should have been there, the deputy president and the prime cabinet secretary. As
well as even the secretary to the cabinet.
Yeah, at least, but anyway. It is the president's prerogative, as they say, to disband the cabinet and to appoint a fresh one. Yes, and that is the only story captured on the front page of the People Daily this morning. And finally, the Star.
I listened to you. Cabinet is fired. That is according to Ruto. Unasema wangeandika tu fired.
Yes.
One word too.
Or I listen to you. We already know they're fired.
Decision comes after reflection, listening to Kenyans, and after a holistic appraisal, quote unquote, pages 4, 5, 6, and 7.
I think ingefika tu hapa. I listened to you.
Tosha.
You ingine tunajua tayari.
But something else that might be forgotten, Judge Majanja to be cremated at Kariako on Saturday, which is tomorrow. As the judges pay glowing tribute. Judge Majanja passed away on Wednesday after, I think, a whole surgery happened. So
I think that piece of news has been probably reported because of what has been happening in the country, and especially this dissolution of the cabinet. So many people have not really seen the death of Judge Majanja on the front pages. Ideally, it should have been. Yes.
That is the stand. That takes us to the cartoons. Kabla tuite Bansi.
Yes, as Bansi gets into studio to tell us what to expect for Feel Good Friday. Let's take a look at the cartoons. So on the page 14 of the Standard, 2 frames there of the president and him talking to a Gen Z. And on the first frame, the president tells the Gen Z, yes, I did it. Of course you did, yes. You did, but anaambia sasa, sawa zaks. Sawa zaks. Sasa anguka nayo. Anguka nayo, there's another animal called graft. Sasa anguka nayo. Sijui kama zaks atasikia pia aseme, I listened to you.
Itakuwa noma.
Ni kazi ngumu.
Itakuwa noma.
That's a cartoon on page 14 of the Standard. On page 14 also of the Daily Nation, same thing, cabinet dismiss or dismiss, the president playing there with cups and die.
Ile karata unacheza.
Yes, anacheza karata pale. Na kuna jamaa hapa chini ya meza ana sweat. Anasema tu sijui kanta survive. Kuna wengine wamejificha upande ule mwingine. Most of these other people just looking in from outside what's happening. And yes, the tension, the anxiety among members of the cabinet yesterday, I think is what is captured just before the announcement was made, because none of them knew if they were going to survive or not. They must have been very anxious, waiting to see what the president would say. That's a cartoon on the Daily Nation today.
On the Star, we had started with this one.
Yes.
So I think it's my best this morning.
Anguka
Nayo. They went to that old challenge. The caricature of President William Ruto dancing to the tunes of Anguka Nayo, produced by and sung by Wadaglis. Wanaitwa hivyo, Wadaglis. Then you have those cabinets actually protruding out, and zingine hata zimetoka.
Hiyo vile wameleta cabinet hapo, I think the cartoonist this time on the Star really tried. I like this one.
Oh yes. Wengine pale juu wamebaki hawana.
Wao wali survive inside the cabinet. Wengine wote wako chini. Alianguka nao.
Manze. You near the Star on People Daily. Star knows take cabinet hiyo ndio wheelbarrow. The yellow one. Those ones in akawa flip off the edge of the cliff akawarusha. Kuna jamaa pale anashikilia gitaa, no pressure.
Wow.
Mwingine amemshikilia nyuma ya mgongo. The two gentlemen who also survived.
Stano's take. Those are the cartoons this morning. Bansi is in studio, our weekend queue. I'm telling you, this is going to be a real big weekend.
It is. It's a huge celebration.
Are you celebrating? By the way, congratulations as a Gen Z. You've actually applied the pressure. Mmekanyaga kabisa. Mulianguka nayo.
Fred, first of all, gents, good morning.
Good morning.
Did you guys expect what happened yesterday to happen?
Yes, to some extent I did, because it was the only now natural course of action. I didn't see any other way. And most of the commentators we've been talking to have been saying, yes, that's the next thing. And given the kind of discussion they had when they were signing the IBC bill alongside Raila Odinga and the other leaders, they hinted that that could happen. They talked about a reorganization of the administration, which basically means a dissolution of such offices.
I expected partial dissolution. Some notable cabinet secretaries who, well, the public has really been giving an outcry of how they portray themselves out here. I expected a partial. Same as this, 5 of them, nitatoa, but not now. I think for me the shocker was all of them.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I said to the God of Mudavadi, please locate me.
But it's happened before. It's happened before. You may not remember when Mwai Kibaki was president, after, because he was on the other side of the 2005 referendum that lost. So immediately after that referendum loss, he fired the entire cabinet, only retaining the vice president, Mudi Awori at the time, and the attorney general, I think it was Amos Swako at the time. This time around, even the attorney general didn't survive.
19 years later.
Oh yes.
Lakini mmefanyia babu na mamba vibaya. You guys literally mmemtoka basi ya funky. Hauko kwa list. Go back.
Say labda ende Paris lounge.
Yo. But then again,
bad.
Now the discussion this entire week has been Anguka Nayo. And I was caught unawares when someone recorded me while nilikuwa na try kuanguka.
I didn't know you could dance.
Well, I try.
I always thought you had 2 left feet.
They're still left, both of them, but I tried.
Because Stanley can barely move.
Now today I was hoping...
Today we're going to be having dancers here. Later, when on that day I was wearing a double breast.
Oh, najua kwa nimekula, nimechoka. But anyway, it's a feel good Friday, Freddie, and of course it's been an amazing week. I know it's going to be an amazing weekend because Gen Zs and millennials have planned a party, you know, to celebrate what happened yesterday. And of course, in the entertainment news, Vera Sidika is looking for a Gen Z boyfriend. And quite a lot of applications have been sent to her DM.
Anguka Nayo.
Anguka Nayo for real. And
why are you looking at me when you're saying that?
See, I'm telling you because you need to learn the dance.
Oh, okay.
Also, we have a wedding of the century this weekend from an Indian couple, Ananat Ambani and Rathika Merchant. They had a couple of traditional weddings before the actual wedding that's set to start happening today.
Until Sunday.
Till Sunday. Now, the previous pre-weddings Justin Bieber performed and Rihanna. So we're just waiting to see who will be performing at the wedding.
Speaking of weddings, there's a couple that met during the Maandamano, and I believe they're going to be, the gentleman now proposed.
Yeah, already engaged.
Is he sure? It's just the effect of the tear gas. You know something?
Someone said,
once the fog wears off, what happens?
Someone said people are getting partners during Maandamano. The only thing I got was tear gas.
Oh yes, inile unasema wapenzi waandamanaji.
Hey, wapenzi waandamanaji for real.
All right. A lot to look forward to later on. It is a Feel Good Friday right here on Morning Cafe at TV47. Next up after the break, of course, State of the Nation. Hesbon Owila and Josephat Kamanya will be in studio to discuss vile President alianguka na hiyo cabinet jana. That and a lot more coming up. Of course, you can be part of this entire conversation throughout the show up until 10 a.m. Tweet X handle. Ni kama cabinet saini X's what?
Hey.
Our X handle is at TV47 Kenya, and on Facebook it's the other way around. TV47 News on X, TV47 Kenya on Facebook.
On Facebook at 22047 is our SMS number 0793267279. We'll be back with you with Bansi Kimuyo at around 8 a.m. with some nice music. DJ Granite will be there. On the ones and twos, we'll be having some nice kind of dances pale, and tuanze weekend vizuri.
Sherehe anguka nayo.
Kwenye bingwa wa wiki.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni Ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
What point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business. It's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries, and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave. Wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of 3. I have 2 girls and a boy who is Clinton and who is autistic.
When my heart got healed, I decided to come out to be creating CP awareness, to let other people know that there is such a condition, and people that has it is not that they are witches.
Together, let's go beyond the limit every Saturday at 8 p.m.
Welcome to The Realtor, where we take you on an exciting journey from bare land to dream home. Step 1. Finding the perfect plot. We explore location, size, and potential. Next, construction begins. Witness the foundation being laid, walls rising, and rooms taking shape. Step 3. Electricity matters. We delve into wiring, switches, and smart home tech. Step 4. From paint choices to fixtures, it's all about aesthetics. Step 5. It's time to get the right furniture. Finally, the big day. Time to move in and create memories. Join us on the journey to making homes a reality on The Realtor, Tuesdays 6:30.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that, so when in the boardroom is a chairman.
Welcome back. Among the top trends this morning on X, Anguka Nayo is still there. This is Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Indimuli. Time for us to take a look at the state of the nation. We're privileged to have in studio 2 gentlemen to help us with this discussion. On my immediate right, Hesbon Owila, media and political communications expert. Good morning, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
And Josephat Kamanya, political analyst. From the top of your head, Hesbon, did you really expect this or the extent of which the president went yesterday?
Well, I think most Kenyans expected something to happen. A number of things, have happened, before what happened yesterday. First was the demonstrations because of the finance bill, so we expected something to happen. The president withdrew it. Then, the demonstrations went on. The president had to join, the Twitter space discussion. And I think a number of things that were raised in the Twitter space discussion actually told you that, the Gen Zs and, the Kenyans who are out in the streets demonstrating expected more. Maybe we did not expect the entire cabinet to go, but if you look at it, the president had no choice. This is a political situation that you cannot dispense with others and leave others. It would cause a lot of rank and acrimony again. So I know a few of them might come back, but I think the best option for the president to dispense with the entire cabinet was, deal with it in its entirety, and then the ones who are coming back now will be appointed based on the conversations that the president said he's going to have.
And Bwana Kamanya, of course, a lot has been said about the appointees that the president had, the quality of cabinet members he had. He himself has complained about them. The National Assembly, after that vetting process back in 2022, even the chairman of ODM, I remember Bwana John Mbadi saying that this is a president's skunk, let's give it to him. This is a perfect opportunity for him to rectify the wrongs he made in as far as his choice of cabinet.
Well, good morning to our viewers. And it would appear that the call for Kenyans for change is now beginning to take root. And as Hesbon has said, this is our moment where the president had to be very decisive and decide as he embraces the changes that are required, how also does he balance with the political class? Because remember, all these CSAs were political appointees, in a manner of speaking. And Again, now Kenyans wanted change. As you rightly say, going back to when they were being vetted, there were questions of competency mainly, and issues of integrity came up. And yeah, Bandi said, you know, maybe perhaps not debate it further. Let's give him his skunk and then we see what he does with it. 6 months or thereabout into it, the president came out and he did say to us Kenyans that he found himself to have been more knowledgeable, more informed on various matters regarding the various ministries the CSAs were supposed to be briefing him on, which was a call for them to style up. Remember, he said that. And well, 1 year later, here we are. So I think he has made the right move because Kenyans really, we are tired of just having flower girls, of having office bearers who really are not efficient or prudent enough to serve us as Kenyans. And secondly, remember the president said, and this is why I think most of them will not come back actually, that no civil servant beyond 60 will be seeking extension of contract. Thus, if anybody is beyond 60, really, it should be a principled call that there is no variation. When
Do you think that will be the consideration in as far as cabinet appointments going forward?
It should be one of them because we have competent Kenyans who can serve. Hesbon can serve in one of the CSs.
And speaking of that, the people already, and ODM has been accused of behaving like a vulture. Like they saw an arm is about to fall and now they're celebrating and looking very excited. Like they're seeing a possibility of them occupying some of those positions. Does that concern you?
You see, I don't think anyone would want to join a ship whose sail is very indeterminate. You know, you don't know what would happen to this regime. Because for me, there are 4 things that probably we need to look at critically. One is the fact that there is a sense in which the people's power has become very powerful. So to a large extent, the president has actually been pushed to do this, not because of politics, but simply because of the people's power. The fact that they went back to Article 1 of the Constitution and stuck with the people shall. Because, you know, may is a possibility. The fact that we can give power to institutions is just a question of possibilities. Now, I wouldn't understand why someone would want to join this ship at the point where you don't know where these people power will stop. Then number 2 is the indictment of Parliament. You know, if Parliament gave us these cabinet secretaries and we have people celebrating because they're all going home, then we have a problem in Parliament. So there are so many things we need to sort before we even think of who is joining the cabinet. And then number 3, there's also an indication that the president listens. Either he listens or he's been forced to listen. So if another team comes in and things go bad and the president is forced again to act, I think whoever is coming in would be coming in knowing that there is a possibility of the people pushing the president out. And if they join that, they'll go out with the president. And then lastly, is we don't know when this will stop. We don't know when these Gen Zs will stop. We don't know when the conversations around good governance will stop. And then we don't know whether the things that the people actually want will be achieved by a new cabinet in place. Because my thinking is this, it is not a question of the cabinet. I mean, that cabinet could have been as incompetent as it was, but you see, a cabinet position is basically a policy level, you know, a government directive position, you know, that is implemented coming down. And therefore, the political will for a cabinet to deliver does not entirely rest in the person who is appointed, but it rests with the appointing authority. So to the extent that the appointing authority still exercises and wields power, you know, it is this appointing authority that has to deliver on the promises that they made. And I keep going back to that it's not about who is in position. I mean, it could be anyone in that position, but Kenyans will go back to what are the promises that President William Ruto made as he was campaigning. And I think these promises were fairly lofty. And it doesn't matter whether we change the cabinet 20 times, if we don't feel that bottom-up approach model, you know, that model that took so many mambambogas, so many guys who were chomaing mahindi outside there, to the hustler's mansion. And they were told, This is how we are going to build the economy. This government will be your government. Now, that government being our government does not necessarily mean that we have to be in those positions. It simply means that that government has to make our lives comfortable. We have to feel that change. And, you know, to a large extent, it is not like we were even where we were. This is the first regime that has gotten to a space where it has not taken people to another level, neither has it left people where people were. It has actually made situations worse for people. And I think that, for me, is the critical thing. And if ODM wants to join that kind of uncertainty, I think at the end of the day, Kenyans will just celebrate sending a bigger, you know, chunk of politicians who are problematic in this country come 2027.
Okay, and we'll come back to that issue of ODM later on. But from a communication perspective, and let me stay with you, Hesbon, for a while. From a communications perspective, as you say, yesterday's action indicate that the president listens. The same could indicate other things as well. The president has been seen to come out and communicate a lot of things in the past few weeks. Many question why he took so long to fire the cabinet. That in itself communicated. Do you think that he's suffering from a bit of confusion? He admitted that his communication team has failed. Right now we see him trying to address in different ways all these issues. Do you think he's hanging on straws in as far as communicating is concerned right now? That he's just latching on anything that he can hold?
I think I wouldn't really blame you know, his communication team, because we are dealing with politicians here. And, you know, if you look at the history of the president, I think the president is a very hands-on, you know, kind of politician. He takes charge of almost everything. He's been in the public domain saying that he knows more than, you know, his cabinet secretaries. So I think that makes life difficult for his communication team. And I think it just needs someone who is fairly strategic in his communication team, which I think they lack. Someone who would understand that it's not a question of, you know, getting information outside there. It's a question of being fairly strategic to understand that this is the direction that you're going. This is the kind of information that we need to put out. These are the target audiences that we need to target with this information differently. And we've got to figure out what kind of response are we going to get from this communication, so that that communication is informed in such a way that it can deal with the responses. But I think, having said that, it's a bit clear that his entire communication team is so press minded that they think communication is about getting information outside there, which I think is not the case. Communication is about having a relationship with the recipients and getting to give them the best information that can help them understand what the government is doing, and receive from them information that would help the government do the right thing. So to a large extent, they are not doing that. They are so rooted in public communication like it was 15, 20 years ago, not knowing that we live in an intermediated kind of platform. But lastly, I think the biggest challenge that the president faces is that he has come out as the solution to all our problems. No president is going to solve all those problems. Yes. You know, and from a communication perspective, I think it's prudent that his communication team and the think tanks behind his action move away from the campaign mode and basically go back to the campaign period to pick out. Now, these are the key things that the president promised. These are the key things that he's committed to, and start communicating in such a way that they tease out the ones that he promised and he has done, tease them out and package a communication strategy for what he has delivered. The ones that are still on course, package a communication on what is happening and how these ones will be delivered. The ones that have been taken over by timelines, the ones that you're saying you promised this within this number of days and you've not delivered, they have to have an explanation for that. So unless they disaggregate everything that they need to communicate, this issue of having a president who goes in front of the press and talks about the things he's achieved, is one thing. We are not interested in the things that he's achieved because he promised so much. Even yesterday, immediately went to fertilize as a first statement. Yes, and we can't fertilize the soil to prosperity. There is a lot to agriculture, and I'm told fertilizer constitute a very negligible percentage of the productive value chain. So there's a sense in which he has to go back, and his communication team has to go back to, these are the things that we promised Kenyans. Now we have to have our conversations with Kenyans on the success stories that we've had, on the trajectory that we have with the other things, and at what extent are we, closer to success in the things that we promised or not. And then the ones that we promised to deliver and we've not delivered. What is the explanation? Have we shifted our strategy? And to what extent is that serving the interest of Kenyans based on the realities that we have today and not the campaign period?
Bwana Kamanya, we have to admit that the president has, at least for the past few weeks, appeared to be the only person speaking. Despite having a huge cabinet, some serious members, and anyone else speaking was saying something that probably wasn't making people happy. Yesterday, I know one of the dailies went with some piece of news quoting the Attorney General, or now the former Attorney General. Justin Muturi said that was not me. But that's the kind of communication coming from his team. Some members of the cabinet were talking about how expensive their watches were in interviews. And now, leaving the president to address all these things alone, attending X spaces, attending media interviews, giving statements here and there, and he's doing this alone. Even when he cancelled or he rejected the finance bill, the same people who were in parliament and had bulldozed through the same thing were behind him still clapping. And you wonder, is the president really, does he really have friends?
Well, it begs to understand actually what kind of a leadership style he has employed. Because as you rightly say, we've had different communications from same government officials. Even him himself, he's come out to denounce or rather downplay any statements from the deputy president. Remember during the round table when he was asked about a statement from the deputy president regarding abductions, and he said, I'm the one who speaks for the government. And you see, this is your deputy. So there's been a lot of conflicting messages from the same administration, and the buck stops with him. I opine that he ought to have orchestrated a better communication system from the onset of his formation of his government. And just to take us a little bit back, as Hesbon has said, regarding his ascent to presidency, and now the high expectation and hope that we had as Kenyans, which were domiciled on the manifesto. And you know, the manifesto, rather the plan, was a promissory note that these are the things I'm going to deliver to you as Kenyans. Largely, he was elected based on the fact that he was a deputy president who seems to be saying, during now the campaign season, he was agitating that more would have been done had we worked in a better formula in the previous regime. So we gave him a chance, among other considerations. We gave him a chance. So hopes were very high. And people expected that once he ascends to office, he'll be able to at least form an administration that listens to the people, that addresses the needs of the people, that revises the public policy to fit the immediate needs that we are contending with. More so, the cost of living, that was number one. Furthermore, also electoral justice, because that's something we have to contend with every 5 years. Remember, this NADCO also came up as a result of that. So there were a lot of expectations, there was a lot of hope. But where he failed largely was that upon getting into office, the hubris, as this has become a very common name now, of his associates grew louder. And Kenyans started to now wonder, what are we really dealing with here? Do we have a president who is really in authority? Or is he being held hostage by his friends who can say anything at any time and nothing happens? But we gave him time, we extended him some grace, which seems to have expired. And Kenyans have been right through and through. Because remember, in this first X meeting, and I opine there shall be others, because this call for 150 multi-sector will not happen. If you're not meeting on X, there's no need to meet. During this first X meeting, the president himself said, I have called, and he quoted the nominated Senator, Karen Nyamo, the majority leader, the chair of the finance committee, the Kimani Kuria. I've called them and tried to engage them on change of I mean, how you communicate. Basically, he was talking about communication 101. If you're in a position of leadership, there is the way you need to disseminate your information. There is a way you need to engage the public. But we seem to have had a Kenya Kwanza administration that says, we are here to tell you, period. It does not work like that. You cannot have a soliloquy where you're talking to yourself and just want people to receive whatever you are, sending out. Therefore, even how we move on from this point, and this is why you see people are saying, we are not interested in a dialogue anymore. We have listened enough, we have tried to talk to you enough, we just need action. You know what we want. Dissolve the cabinet, done. There is a call, like once the National Assembly resumes, change the House leadership. We want decent leadership. We want people who know how to communicate to the country. Even as we move on from this point, it is very, very paramount for the president to know how is he best going to continue engaging Kenyans. How is he best going to, for the time that he'll be in office. Because the day before yesterday, he was in Kajiado, and he was talking about people having to wait until 2027. And somehow, the concept that you don't get it comes into play. This is not about election now. We're talking about our development agenda. We're having an economic moment where we need to talk about our revenue, our own source revenue as a nation, and about our expenditure, our wage bill. These are things we need to revise. So he needs to look for people that are willing to stand with him, and he needs to listen. He needs to take advice, because it seems that what was being said earlier during the first year of this administration, that the president has his hand on everything that is happening in this country. It seems to be true, and then it seems to be the wrong approach.
And that in itself has been captured also on the front page, I think, of the People Daily. The big headline on the People Daily is good riddance, and then there's a different story of lonely at the top, and they show the president walking away from the podium yesterday towards the very big doors of the presidential pavilion, and no other person is seen there. Even his ADC is not visible, and it would appear that the president has slowly gotten to a point where he has very little friends, if any. His deputy does not stand by him. Members of his cabinet were busy doing other things, and now he's seeking for new friends. Hesbon?
I think he's in a very good space. That if he has realized that he doesn't have good friends, he has a clean slate right now. I mean, if he wanted to get rid of anyone, I think the dissent has helped him, because now no one will blame the president for sending them home. It is the people who called for this, sacking of all the cabinet secretaries. So he's in a good place, and I don't think the president needs, I mean, no one will remember any other person in this regime other than President William Ruto. Just like in the last regime, the last 10 years, we're talking about President Uhuru Kenyatta's time. We're talking about what Kibaki did for 10 years. No one remembers who Kibaki finance minister was. No one remembers who Kibaki internal security minister was. We remember what Kibaki did for this country. And I think it puts the president in a very solid position to focus on Kenyans. This is a president who was elected entirely because of his industriousness during the campaign period. Most of these guys who joined the president, they couldn't even pull crowds unless he was in that, political rally, And to a large extent, it is the goodwill that Kenyans had of someone who had been part of the Jubilee regime for 10 years and, came out as, a proponent of the people who understood what the government ought to have done and didn't do. And he promised that I know I have been here, I know where we went, we fell short, and once I get this power, I will redefine everything. I will change they even came up with the bottom-up model, which was fairly interesting, telling Kenyans that, money was not trickling from the top. Now money will be coming from the bottom. And I think those promises were real. And if the president forgets about being anyone's friend, friendship can be developed after he's president.
He doesn't need friends right now?
I mean, he needs people who work. I mean, if you have friends who will tell you that you're smart when you're naked, why would you have those friends?
He seems to have been backed into a corner, and he seems very lonely at this time.
Which for me, is a very good space to be. And I can tell you there are indications that even the president himself has thrown some of his friends under the bus. You know, a president going to the Twitter space basically means that he has made himself the lowest hanging fruit as far as public accountability is concerned. And I think, for me, the indication he gave was very simple, that if I could go to Kenyans on a Twitter space and responded to their issues, none of my cabinet secretaries going forward wouldn't find time to respond to issues of Kenyans. And that's where I have an issue. I mean, it's a dichotomous kind of situation, because one, there is likely to be robust public accountability, that if you don't do the right thing, the public would call you to this space where everyone can congregate and meet and ask you questions. Yes, you know. And the president has actually made it clear that, I mean, people will be put under scrutiny. The flip side of it, which I'm worried about, is when is it likely to stop? You know, we can have people power and lose the country, you know. So to a large extent, there is that element of, you know, robust public accountability, and there is also the element of putting ministers on toes to the point where they can't work. But I think where the president has put himself, he doesn't need to have friends. He simply needs to deliver on the promises that he made. He simply needs to change the lives of Kenyans based on the lofty ambitions they had during the campaign trail. And I think once he does that, anyone who delivers will become a friend of both the president and Kenyans.
Wow. Let's take a break now, and when we come back, I'll be taking a look at some of the top trends despite the action yesterday by the president to resolve his entire cabinet. The top trend on X is still hashtag Ruto must go. Is it working? That after the break.
Promoting insurance awareness with Insurance Regulatory Authority. Diseases and accidents can occur suddenly and when least expected. If this occurs to you or your dependents and you have a medical insurance policy, it gives you peace of mind to know that your medical expenses will be catered for by the insurer up to your policy limit. These include hospitalization fees, doctor's fees, and other related costs. Read and understand the terms and conditions of your policy. This message is brought to you by IRA.
Why do we do it? Hide, cover up, tone down. Choose boldness.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni Ridgeback ana sniff Simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of...
What point are you aware? 7 Morning Cafe. My name is Fred Indimuli. We continue the conversation in studio with Hesbon Wheeler and Josephat Kamanya. And the actions yesterday by the president in dissolving his entire cabinet were very much loaded across board. Very many people were happy, and looking at the general reaction, it is what people would want to see. Yet it does not reflect on the kind of sentiment online, especially on X. Yes, the applause was there. Anguka Nayo trended for quite a while, and Drain the Swamp continued. But then now we're seeing that the hashtag Ruto must go has come back to the top trend this morning. And one wonders, many people expected that after such an action, at least the public pressure would dissipate. To some extent, it does not appear to be waning at all, Bwana Kamanya.
Yeah, correct. Far from it. There is no way this dissolving of the cabinet would have been a solution to what we are contending with as a country. And the call for president to resign seems to getting louder by the day. And largely because people are saying, we don't have trust or confidence in you anymore. It's a motion of no confidence, actually. And even if he were to reconstitute a cabinet, which there seems to be no need for it anyway, what would be so different? You know, because a paradigm shift is what is needed. And if the leader of the pack is unable to lead the pack to greener pastures, to low and cooler regions for water in the wilderness, then what happens? The leader of the pack is there and then done away with by whatever means. It's there in the animal kingdom, you know. This is what the president is contending with. The call by Kenyans for him to step away is largely because of him saying that, indeed, I have failed. And he's answering the questions by Kenyans. Number one, is your cabinet incompetent? Yes. Have you been listening to us? No. That's why he had to come to the X space. Do you agree that your leaders in the various houses and other quarters are also, the hubris comes up, you know, they are arrogant, the exhibition of opulence that is highly not very appealing to Kenyans? Yes. Have you spoken to them and they don't listen to you? Yes. So what makes you think that if we do extend you, you know, some period, you're going to do things differently? And this is where he needs to convince Kenyans by making changes that being listed. You know, you go to X, the call for the revision of the leadership in the National Assembly, and him not daring to travel outside the country just for no good reasons. And you saw him cancel his trip to France for this Olympic event. We are also expecting him to issue a statement upon him being invited to the UK for the swearing in of the new Prime Minister to say that he's not going, and many others that should follow. That it is upon him squarely to try and appeal, request, beg, and talk to Kenyans and convince us why he should continue being our president. This is not about friendship. And like Hezbollah has said, with friends like the former cabinet secretaries, who needs enemies? They have all set him up to this moment. And what he's dealing with as a current president of this nation, great nation, Kenya, is largely not his creation. The economic moment you see us going through, he did not create this crisis. It has been accumulating over time. But he stood out. He said he's equal to the task. He asked us to help him form a government and he lead us into prosperity, which is something he has been talking about through and through. But he's beginning to show signs of not being able to achieve that. I think the prudent thing would be for him to come out and talk to Kenyans, tell them, I may have promised you this much, but in essence, I will not be able to deliver this much. This is what I can do. Then we begin that conversation.
But is there a risk?
And finally, he needs to stop talking about the avoidable. I hear now it's no longer the affordable housing, the avoidable housing project. Because it brings a sense of angst. Kenyans ask, this is not the priorities we want. You know, the shift. Of course, we need a healthcare system. We need public policy that is really serving the needs of our education, health, security. Those are things we cannot compromise on. But he needs to come out now and tell Kenyans, I'm being very honest with you. I cannot deliver on this. I cannot do this. Please help me build our country.
Is there a risk when he continues giving in to an extent where people feel it's a bit too much for a president to present himself so vulnerably in an X space, be pushed into a corner, you dissolve the cabinet, and people are asking, till when? Because it doesn't seem to change anything. Ruto must go is still top trend. Is there a risk if he continues on that trajectory?
Big risk, because, you know, for any communication that is made in public, the communicator increases commitment. So there's a big risk because if he goes to most of these public spaces, and you know, X attracts like people in the tens of thousands, you know. I think the one he did almost hit 400,000. The one, you know, the Gen Zs do averages 100,000 and people see it for almost 9-12 hours. So the big risk there is that you're increasing the commitments that you're making. And I think where we have reached, we don't need anyone to commit to anything.
We don't need more promises.
We don't need more promises. We need action on the promises that we've had in the past. And I think, to a large extent, Kenyans understand that, it's not like the president was going to solve everything. But Kenyans elected him, because they thought he had what it takes to at least solve most of our problems. Now, the big question here is that, is he the one who put us in this space? No. So even the responses that he gives that people have been unemployed since way before I became a member of parliament, Kenyans have been having these problems, for a long period of time. They are not problems that came to the fore when I became the president. I think that is, defeating the main essence of why we voted for him. Kenyans voted for the president not because of any other thing, but because he demonstrated that he had what it takes to solve our problems. So he cannot be the same person who is telling us that I found these problems. Yes, you found the problems, but we elected you to solve those problems. And I think the whole idea of communicating too much right now has to be looked at as the risk that it is. Unless you are communicating how you are delivering on those promises, and you're strategic about it, I don't think it is in the place of the government to say that we promise this and we cannot do. I mean, any serious strategic communicator would tell you that there's a way you can say, that this one is not going to be done immediately, but reassure people that there's a plan in place on how we are going to do this. And from where I sit, all this vulnerability that he has put himself into, the fact that now we're asking ourselves, when will it stop, is a good space for Kenyans and for the president. It's a good space for Kenyans for the simple reason that at the end of the day, we know that if he doesn't do, we will question, and we have an ability to question because he has brought himself to that level. And then number two, it is a good space because we know the president has pressure from everywhere. There is pressure from the common mwananchi, there is pressure from the people he beat in the last election. There is even perceived pressure from an opposition that is within the Kenya Kwanza, and specifically within UDA. And therefore, the only thing that would save his regime is the people. And for the people to save his regime, he has to deliver for the people. And, there are things that they have to start communicating, robustly and helping the public understand where we are and where we are going and what we've achieved. I mean, this regime has achieved so much. I mean, if I was given 1 week, I would develop a communication plan of what they have achieved, what they are likely to achieve in the next few days, and what they are working on, which they will achieve either in the second term or towards the end of the first term. And I fail to understand why they can't just do that. Like, all of a sudden, the Hustler Fund that was a big thing for this regime as they were campaigning, no one is talking about it. Absolutely, as in no one is talking
headlines about the Hustler Fund were scandalous.
Yes, and you see, these are basic things that they can deal with. When they were talking about the Hustlers Fund, some of us were critical. You can't give us numbers of how many people have borrowed the money. We want to understand this Hustler Fund was not about the number of people who are borrowing money. The Hustler Fund was about transforming the lives of people at the bottom of the pyramid. That's why it's the name, the Hustlers Fund. So even the model that they gave it, from a strategic point, you'd see that it was not going to achieve much. Because if you give someone 1,500, that is someone who needs to be in employment, to be paid. 1,500, they're going to buy my choma and mutura here. But if you enable small and micro enterprises, to build the capacity to employ people, and these models have been done elsewhere. China transformed itself and got everyone from poverty to above the poverty line by 2020. They have done that. There is no poor people in China. How did they do it? It is money that had to be used strategically to the extent that you would give people a grant to build the economy, with a model that would ensure that they also employ people who would contribute into the tax bracket, and you also give them a loan. So the loan comes in as, a capital investment. They can buy, capital factors of production, but then the grant becomes the working capital to sustain that. Now, the cabinet secretary who was in charge, I mean, those are people who needed to go home, because if they couldn't think beyond the promises that the president made to deliverables on those promises, they had no business being in power. And I think this is a good position for the president to start from a clean slate, stop many promises, but just package the things that he promised in terms of what has been achieved, where they are on track, and what is likely to be achieved and when.
And what happened yesterday, of course, there's been precedents. President Mwai Kibaki fired his entire cabinet back in 2005 after the referendum where his side lost. And it was mid his very first term, more or less the same as President William Ruto. Yet he still survived, got to the elections in 2007. That can be argued whether or not he won, but then it still went up to 2013. It means that President William Ruto still has a chance. Do you see that chance, Bwana Kamanya?
A slim one, though. He does have a chance because he's still our president, as we speak. And until Kenyans decide otherwise, he remains being one. But I wouldn't draw much comparison between him and the Kibaki regime, because back then we are contending with a constitutional moment, you know, the yes and no. And this is a whole different timing as well, and the issue at hand. Kibaki was dealing with the politicals, largely so, because they were pulling to different sides on matters, constitution and the reforms. And now, President Ruto is dealing with the economic moment, and he's dealing with the populace, with the population. It's the people. The people. The people. And you can never defeat the people. Even the constitution is not supreme than the people. We are the ones who have come together and delegated, come up with a document that we call the constitution and say this is how we want to be governed. And that's why you see Article 1 is that power, sovereignty of the people is supreme. So there isn't much comparison. Kibaki seems to have drawn on meritocracy when he was forming his government. And he did not reward most of the politicals, unlike the president has done. He leaned more to autocracy, our current president. He seemed to have called upon his persons who are largely questionable in terms of competence and ability. And as Hesbon says, even during the campaign seasons, they could not even draw crowds. So they didn't even have much political capital. So dispensing them then would have been the right decision for the president, and finding other avenues of rewarding them other than bringing them on board and bringing himself shame like we are dealing. It's a big shame, actually, that only barely 2 years we are beginning to say, if President Kibaki did better, why are you failing? Because President Kibaki, even with all those issues, he still offered us free education. And he increased taxes. You know, he was the first president actually to increase taxes since independence by a very significant margin. But our current president, he has increased taxes, but the cost of living has gone much higher, and public policy is just disintegrated. So there isn't much comparison per se. People are even saying, why can you not just take us back to Kibaki's economic moment? Unfortunately, the president was drawing examples from Kibaki during the campaign season. Unfortunately, we are in a time whereby nothing goes uncaptured. Everything is documented. And that's why you see clips of videos are brought out. You said you can do. Points of reference, you know, like a really fair conversation. There is no one time I found the president being falsely accused of having not said, or being told you said and you did not. But everything is there. He's called out on his own word, not people he sent. Nobody is misquoting him, but he's not able to argue his case. And I'm not saying he should come out and say, no, I was lying to you, because if that was the case, he should resign. You know, if he outrightly says, I was lying to you, he should resign. What I'm saying is that the presidents need to understand that whatever former regimes we have had, those were the presidents of our times then. Let's deal with the reality of the day. You're the president of the country. The populations, Kenyans, do not have faith in your leadership anymore. Kenyans do not have faith in the choice of persons you have selected to support your administration. You have two choices only. Reshuffle, or resign and send home every person that is being questioned. Number two, review your leadership mode. What style of leadership are you employing? If you called for the bottom-up economic model and it is not giving, like we are saying nowadays, then come out. We are the Kenyans. You are here to serve us. You are responsible to us as citizens. Come out and express your reservations on whatever is happening. If you have lost any perpetual support that you expected upon coming into office, it is upon you to revise. How do I proceed from here on? Because the other option is honestly for the president to resign. We cannot have 3 more years of this disarray, there is no telling on how far this will go.
Okay.
As we are rightly saying, there is a risk of overreaching, even us as a population. And he does not want to be the president who leads us down the path of destruction. The Arab Spring started off just like this. You know, people came out, they said we don't want, you know, it happened to Egypt, went all the way, Tunisia, Libya, you know, it spread out. This one started with just one demonstration. Unfortunately, even as you continue to have this conversation, lives have been lost. People are yet to be buried. We have a young boy I saw who is riddled with rubber bullets. The government, and this is now his continuous failures as a president, the government is doing nothing, not even extending medical care. Because there are ways of really reaching out and trying to correct the wrongs that are correctable. People who are still surviving, they don't need to contend with medical bills. They don't need to worry about the next surgery is going to cost how much. That young boy is riddled with rubber bullets. I think they removed about 5 or 6. He still have a few in his body. Why is the government not intervening?
Okay.
Then how do you come to the platform and start addressing the nation, and you're not able really to be empathetic with the chaos that the country is going through?
Let's go back to the issue of friends, and you say he does not need friends. But from the nature of President William Ruto and how he works, he seems to value loyalty a lot. Even from the parliamentary leadership and even members of his cabinet, these are his hangout buddies. They hang out, they have tea together, they walk and chat and laugh, and that is how he works. To say that now he can change his mode of operation would be expecting too much. Yet now we are seeing that he's also turning to this perpetual savior of subsequent regimes and administrations, which when they encounter serious challenges, they turn to, Raila Odinga. That kind of friendship is not the kind of friendship William Ruto has had with his people. How will it really work?
I think it's a question of what has to be done. You know, I think the president was very loyal to his lieutenants, the people he's worked with. And he made it clear in the last, I think his last campaign at Nyayo Stadium, he was very clear that my government is not going to have any handshake, any sort of government of national unity. He made it clear. That was his rallying call. And that tells you that he didn't need, you know, people who have not been part of the team. And he was very loyal. The appointment of the cabinet, as it were, if you look at the way it was composed, it was reward to his friends, keeping the people who've been with him, folks like CS Adan Duale, and of course it had, you know, an element of looking at 2027. But where we are right now, I think there's one statement he made: I will immediately engage in extensive consultations with the aim of setting up a broad-based government. I think whether he wants his friends or not is immaterial here. It is a question of what would work for Kenyans.
He's been forced to change his approach.
He's been forced to change his approach. And my thinking is, friends have let him down. I think they went there knowing that we've won power against all odds. We have the power. And they forgot that immediately you're sworn in as a president, the campaign mode ends. And now it's delivery. So for the last close to 2 years, I think the people he entrusted, the loyalists he entrusted to deliver, have refused. Either because the environment was not conducive, because, I mean, you can't tell the style that they had, you know. There's a lot of rumor going on outside here on how, you know, he's not receptive to counsel and all that. But that is where we've reached. So it has reached a point where he has to change tact. And for me, this is not a question of convenience or a question of who now becomes the new friend. I mean, you could have your enemies, but for as long as they deliver on the promises that you made, eventually you'll develop a relationship that is in the interest of Kenyans. And Kenyans, you know, should come to this space where we also tell ourselves that we have a democracy that we fought for. Since the return of multi-party democracy in 1992, I think we've had successive regimes where we have rewarded people who have, you know, delivered on their mandate by electing them again, and we have punished people who have not delivered by sending them home. I mean, this is 5 years that the president has. 2 years already gone, you know. He has already given so much. Whether he gets friends or he gets people who have to come in because the situation demands that, I think it has reached a point where we need to be vigilant, but we also need to be cautious of the fact that this government needs to do whatever it has to do. Our responsibility right now is to evaluate with the promises that he has made, you know, to keep his cabinet lean, to deliver on the promises. He has listened. He will do, you know, as much as he can to deliver on his promises. There's a possibility of giving him time to see what this kind of new dispensation will do for Kenyans. And we'll have an opportunity to question. And if he doesn't give us an opportunity to question, we'll have an opportunity in 2027 to send them home.
But the people are looking at this and this, what they're calling the unholy union of, let me not say Azimio, because now many parties have said no, ODM and Kenya Kwanza coming together. And the people are looking at it and saying this is just the political class coalescing together because the status quo has been threatened, and now they're coming together to defend their space. That could actually backfire, not necessarily work for the president, don't you think, Bwana?
Oh yeah, the proposal for dialogue was dead on arrival. They did not even leave KICC before it was shut down. And I agree with you that the ODM fraternity woke up and smelled the coffee, that our opposition position is being taken away from us. And that's why Baba tried to come on board and say, you know, like to attempt to speak on behalf of the opposition, because, you know, this revolution, it's an economic revolution, which cannot be stopped by any coalition, which cannot be stopped by any prayers. So there is no need of wasting moments with the religious fraternity. And we need to have these real conversations. However, all that withstanding, the ODM, because as you rightly say, it's not the Azimio. Mother Karua has distanced herself, Stephen Kalonzo has distanced himself from this call for dialogue. But ODM has found it fit, in a manner of speaking, to come out and try to pacify the revolution, the Gen Zs, on heeding the call for dialogue. But actually, what I remember, there's a statement that came out same day saying that you have done well to come out and help us put you all in one band and send you home. You have boarded your one-way ticket. Yes, that was the message. You've just bought yourself a one-way ticket home come 2027. Because, honestly speaking, there is no political move that can solve the economic crisis we are in. What we need are very pragmatic approaches. And dialogue has no space in this current time. Coming together of these leaders is really not going to form any formidable force that can pacify what we want as Kenyans. Therefore, I think it was bad timing, actually. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga should have stayed away, because, as Hesbon says, during the swearing in, the president said, in my government, there will be no handshake. And he has been very consistent with that statement. You remember even the deputy president said, nimeweka mitego huko State House. So if anybody dares to go, no one will go through. So they were hell-bent on running this government single-handedly. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately for the nation, that approach is not working. And now him beginning to want to call for a broad-based government, again, he's conceding that my leadership style, which is what we are questioning as a country, basically, is not working. And therefore, I may need to reach out to the people who I thought will not be helpful. And if during the campaign period, he told us that this, he was called the Lord of Poverty, the right, you know, he's sanitizing these leaders that were rejected. He's even making the former regime of President Uhuru look good. And we could not wait for President Uhuru to go home. So he's making bad moves. I say that is a bad card. For Raila? For both Raila and both the president. That's not the direction they needed to go. Raila should have stood with the people, and I'm glad he got the message the following day.
Has he?
I hope I hope it is home. And the president ought not to go looking for political reject, looking for persons who have been tried and tested before to solve a solution, to offer a solution to a problem that we believe they are part of that problem.
And when we started, I said that ODM is behaving very much like a vulture. They look very excited. Listening to some of the ODM members of parliament, they sound very excited about the prospect that they could be incorporated in a new government of national unity going forward.
You know, any political party, any political formation would want the reins of power for the simple reason that when you have the reins of power, you dictate the allocation and distribution of resources. And you can't fault ODM. If guys are excited about getting into government, they're excited about either one, the opulence and what comes with the corridors of power, or they're excited because they want to deliver. So to me, so long as they know what they're getting into, because there are two things, it's very dicey. They might actually get into a sinking ship and sink with the ship, or they might get into a ship that is not sinking but is in turbulent waters and stabilize the ship. There is reward and punishment for that, and no one should tell any political party, don't join. If they're joining to save all, this country is for all of us. If ODM joins, or if any other political formation joins in and helps the president to sort the economic issues in this country, deals with the political issues in this country, and by 2027 everyone is happy, it will be good to reward whoever helped. But if they join, and they're joining to protect their threatened privileged position as the political class, they're even making it better for Kenyans. We'll have a bigger chunk of the political relics in this country to send home.
Across board.
Yes, across board, whether they're in ODM, they're in Wiper, wherever they are, So joining for me is not the issue. The issue is when you join, there are consequences. And the consequences are going to be dire if you join to protect your privileged position, to continue with the plunder, to continue with the suffering that has escalated in the recent few years. Will deal with you. Now, when you join and save the ship, you're saving it for this country. You're likely to be dealt with. It's only that now the dealing is most likely going to be a reward. But I think having said that, it will also be a very big thing on the president if this government of that is very inclusive, that is consultative in its formation, comes to the fore. Because it also puts him in a very tricky situation on what he had repeatedly said. I'm not going into a handshake. We will not have anyone who has lost an election join. It will actually cement the fact that he got into this leadership without knowing what it entailed. And, with the bravado that they had before the election, reality has checked in. So there are two things that might happen. People might actually commend him and say, yeah, it's good, you realize in the interest of the country, you did the right thing. But there are people who would also be like, you see, now this is a big mistake we made. He is bringing in the people that we rejected. Then we ought to have, elected the other part, the other party. But at the end of the day, I think there are beautiful stories around this. And I think what I celebrate most is the fact that Kenyans have become a lot more vigilant and are exercising that Article 1 of our Kenyan Constitution, that the power belongs to us, and we have the wherewithal to deal with those who are not exercising that power in our interest. And then number two, it is also a reality check for us that if you're going to make unwise decisions and give power to people who have no clue what to do with that power, especially with regards to the interest of the public, then it is a mistake that we ought not to be making going forward. Because this, for me, is a serious learning experience.
Let's examine some of the prospects of a possible government of national unity. We've had such before with the post-2008, yes? And it was not necessarily the most comfortable situation for the president back then. It did not necessarily give any impetus to development. It was a very harsh working condition for the president then. Why would President Ruto feel that a government of national unity would do him any favors?
As you rightly say, when you draw from our past experiences of coalitions or national unity, we seem to have created two centers of power. I remember even there was a time the Right Honorable Raila Odinga was complaining about the red carpet and a toilet. Why am I not being treated as an equal to the president? And it gave us a lot of conflict around the leadership and necessarily does not yield to the service delivery, which is what we want. I think now President Ruto trying to call on the same, it defeats the purpose. You know, it's a tired argument, because if when you became a president and you were sworn in and you said, my government is not going to be accommodative of any a national union approach, and then here you are saying, okay, I think, guys, I was wrong by saying that. I do need these people. It says you are failing as a leader. You know, again, leadership style is what is being questioned. However, let me take us to a different trajectory. We had about over 20-something million registered voters. But statistically speaking, out of 3 registered voters, only 1 voted for this administration. 2 did not want President Ruto to be a president. And also equally, 2 did not want the Right Honorable Raila to be a president. So I think we forgot, upon getting into office, we forgot that we have a very least popular administration by sheer luck, you know, because even the win was very, the difference was very marginal and very minimal. We forgot that there needed to be more work in convincing the 2 people that did not want President Ruto to be a president, that he deserved to be a president. Now, 2 wrongs do not make a right. If 2 people did not want either of you to be a president out of 3, you coming together is not going to change the equation.
But the numbers make sense.
They do.
2 of you come together.
No, you see, that's the thing. It's not a 1 + 1 is equals 2. This is a 1 plus a -1 is a 0. It's a zero-sum game. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga has no space in this economic revolution. His space is remaining in opposition, that is 1. 2, leading his party in the National Assembly. Because remember, and let's give credit where it's due, ODM, or the Azimio Alliance, did give us a lead way during the voting of the finance bill. They voted no, and they exposed the 204 who voted yes. If he gets to bed with the current regime in this broader government formation system, what will happen to his members in the House? When a bill, because remember, we are not done with the National Assembly. This is where legislation is going to happen. We have about 7 remaining bills from the NADCO that needs to be deliberated upon. We also have the appropriation bill that we need to question. So if President joins, if the opposition led by the ODM party leader joins the President, what happens to the National Assembly? What happens to the members of Parliament? Do they get compromised? Because again, they seem not to have autonomy. That's why I'm saying the opposition needs to stand firm now. Number 2, upon the Parliament resuming in a few days, there is going to be a recall of MPs. The President better not get in the way of that. Because largely it is all the UDA MPs who will be going home. I hear Nyali constituency in Mombasa is very ready. I hear Thika and Kabete are very ready. And there's another constituency, I'm forgetting the name. They can't wait. They cannot wait to recall the MPs. If the opposition and the government get into bed, much as politics makes strange bedfellows, what is going to happen to the National Assembly? Therefore, I feel the President, in my opinion, ought not to engage the Right Honorable Raila Odinga on these matters of economic. If he can deliver, unless he is saying that his bottom-up economic model is not, we cannot realize the changes we want through it, then he has to resign.
Okay. Let's focus now that you brought in the issue of the National Assembly. Let's focus on that house for a moment. This is a house that has come under a lot of criticism, and even now when the country is in crisis and the cabinet has been dissolved, they are comfortably on recess. And one would expect that surely at a time of crisis, they would find it necessary to be alert and to be available in case of any eventuality. It lays credence to the fact that, yes, many people still do not have a lot of confidence in that house. And going forward, they fail to give quality to the president, and people don't believe that they'll give quality to anyone going forward. Do you think time is up for the National Assembly?
Well, I think for me, the biggest recipient of feedback in all this is actually the National Assembly, not even the Senate, the National Assembly. And you see, this idea of there is opposition, there is government in parliament has been rendered, you know, null and void. We have parliament; those are representatives of the people, and what they need to do as a house is basically represent the interests of Kenyans and oversight executive. They failed to do that because Kenyans overwhelmingly rejected the Finance Bill 2024. They passed it and the president sided with Kenyans, which tells you that they did the wrong thing. One, if it originated from the, and all bills, majority of the bills that will originate from the executive will be pushed by the majority leader. It will come to parliament. But the expectation is not that if you're in majority or minority, you take a position based on where you are. You are supposed to take a position in the interest of the people you represent. And the message that has been sent to them critically is that it doesn't matter whether you're majority or minority, you need to do what is in the interest of Kenyans. You know, there are a lot of MPs who went over the hilltop telling Kenyans that, yeah, that finance bill will come, but I will vote yes. Because in as much as you elected me, my people elected me to parliament, my allegiance is to the president. They have been informed that your allegiance is not to the president, neither is it to the government, it is to the people. If this is what the people want and you represent the people, they have the powers to recall you. And I think that the active clause of recalling members of parliament, for me, has sent the right information to parliament. And if they don't act in accordance with you know, the three functions that they have, which is to make the right laws, oversight the executive, and represent the people, then the people have that power. So I don't believe in this idea that anyone should keep off being in government because they're in opposition. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga can do anything he wants with his political career. I mean, it is a position he has earned. If he feels like Kenya is at a point where he needs to, you know, break ranks and work with President William Ruto, and if President William Ruto is amiable to the fact that, you know, the interest of the country is more important than the interest of any single individual, and they work together, that for me does not have any bearing on what parliament does. If their coming together does not serve the interest of Kenyans, we did not elect Raila. We elected President William Ruto, but he has parliament, which we elected to check on him. So whatever they do as two individuals, if it serves the interest of Kenyans and our representatives in parliament support them through the right legislations that resonate with the interests and aspirations of the people that they represent, that is the country that we want. We want a country where the political forces come together to serve the interests of Mwananchi. Because
the picture you've painted is a very ideal one.
Yes.
The kind of parliament we're dealing with is totally off.
The reason why I'm painting that ideal picture is because the ideal is what has brought us here. The ideal that our constitution allows us, you know, to exercise the power directly. So when we realize that the people we've delegated, the constitution says we may delegate. When we realize, and may is a possibility, we've delegated to parliament, they decide to work together with, doing something that is not in our interest. The ideal is parliament is supposed to be our safety valve. Parliament is supposed to stop that. Because in this country, it doesn't matter what policy you come up with, unless it has a legal backing, you know, to be enforced. There's nothing you're going to do. And where does it get that legal backing? In parliament.
Best example is the finance bill of 2024.
Yeah.
Despite the rejection, it is yet to be processed through parliament, meaning it's still hanging in there somewhere.
Yeah, and you see, the fact that it's still hanging means that we have to find a way out of that. We have to find a way, as in parliament, yes. No, National Assembly has to find a way out of that. And you know, if it doesn't find a way out of that, what it does is that it puts everyone in problems. It puts itself in problem, it puts the president in problem. Because Kenyans will ask, now, if the president knew that we are going to a situation where if he doesn't assent, it automatically becomes law within 21 days, why did it allow it to pass through parliament? If he wanted to stop, why didn't he just stop it before the third reading?
Yes.
So it will be casualties everywhere.
On the conduct of the National Assembly, mainly, the Speaker had the opportunity to recall Parliament because there are things they need to attend to. The Leader of Majority, too, must be very well in good understanding of what the country is going through right now. Yet they still sit pretty and wait until 23rd of this month to return because they have to stick to their calendar?
I think the call for that we have a very incompetent National Assembly cannot be loud enough. As you rightly say, we are going through a crisis. And they do know, because they are well versed with the law, that matters finance bill, they needed to come back and act within 21 days. Of course, there are provisions of extension and we can always revert, but for matters of due process, it would have been more prudent for the National Assembly to cut short their recess, come back, and address the core issues that we are contending with now, especially the finance bill. But the incompetence they are bearing cannot allow that. That is one. Secondly, I've always called for what we call institutional independence. Because if the legislative arm of government, which is now the Parliament, was purely autonomous, you know, and just independently doing what they're supposed to do in collaboration with the executive and the judiciary, some of these issues would not have grown to where we are today. But you find yourself, or we have found ourselves as a country, in a position where members of Parliament, before the finance bill was rather tabled, they came out and said, itapita, hata mfanye nini. It is going to go through, no matter what you do. Secondly, I am going to vote yes, because and the MP for Mwea, I think she's Madam Mary, she was quoted saying, my allegiance, my loyalty is to my master. You actually did not even vote for me as a person. You are voting for the UDA party, and I just happen to be in the UDA party. So I'm going to do what my UDA party leader wants me to do. How incompetent that's the other constituency that they cannot wait to recall their MP. Can you be, as an MP, and we are talking about communication 101, to talk like that to your constituents? Once you get into the assembly as a member of Parliament, and I'm glad that we have a divine opportunity moment for us to, moving forward, put members of Parliament, elect members of Parliament who really understand what the role of the member of a Parliament is. Once you do get into Parliament, it is upon you to understand that you just no longer represent your constituency, but you are there to enforce laws, legislation that is going to affect the entire nation. Therefore, it behooves you, as a sitting member of Parliament, to try and soul search, collaborate, research, get feedback, as a House then led by a should be able Speaker, should be able Speaker, legislate over matters of the nation, one that are peaceful and progressive. But this National Assembly has lost its autonomy. The moment they started saying, no matter what, it is going to happen, there seemed to have been a hand in everything, and the hand is none other than the president. So that's why I'm saying, even them coming together with the opposition, if we had an ideal situation whereby our National Assembly was autonomous enough to conduct its affairs, like in other National Assemblies we've seen, we saw the reasons in South Africa, a far right and a far left parties coming together to coalesce. The same happens in Israel. There is never like a clear-cut winner on majority, but they do come to, but when they do get to the floor, even sometimes in the UK, when they get to the floor, they contend on issues of national interest. Members of Parliament sometimes even defy the party position and argue on what is right for the country. That is what we are lacking. We have members of Parliament who have never spoken in this assembly. We have members of Parliament, the only time they will speak is when they are just affirming the party position. And that puts us at risk, because currently there are things the president cannot do constitutionally. They must be legislated over. A case in point is the National Finance Bill. So if we have a strongly incompetent National Assembly like we do, and then on the other hand we have a president who is not even listened to sometimes by the same members of his party, we are in a leadership crisis. Okay. Somebody needs to toe the line, and somebody needs to come out and lead the pack. If the president is not, so he has two options. once the recall process of the MPs starts, we will be doing him a favor for the time that he's in office, because we'll be plucking off the suckers that we feel are not fruitful. All right? Secondly, he needs not to defend any of them. The ship is sinking already. Let us help you offload. So even if it still sinks, at least we have saved the country from more damage.
All right. Let's go back to members of the cabinet, or what is left of it now. Musalia Mudavadi, for some reason, still finds himself there. The deputy president, of course, the president is not within his prerogative to let him go. And many people are asking, how did Mudavadi survive this? I think there's some reference on the Daily Nation that probably he's the one to coordinate the PSs in running their ministries, but many people say, shouldn't the deputy president have done the same?
Well, I think there's a lot in the fact that Mudavadi remained. One, if you look at it from political lenses, it tells you that even the president is alive to the fact that there is 2027, and there are indications of that there's a dotted line, a shift in allegiance to where he thinks his massive political, capital will emerge from, because there is this belief, and I strongly subscribe to that belief, that Mount Kenya region is gone. At least they will not vote to the last man like they did in the last election. So there's a big chunk of Mount Kenya that is pretty much gone. There is a perception that the president is unlikely to go with his deputy president, which is given. I think the deputy president probably sits in a situation where he understands that the agreement was to win the election and serve for 5 terms, not necessarily to serve for 10 years. So, I mean, getting rid of Mudavadi would have been a lot more problematic in terms of the political mathematics that we are looking at going to 2027. That's just the political lens. But I think from a pragmatic lens, you wouldn't clear the entire cabinet and leave us in a vacuum. And you see, Mudavadi sits at a highly placed pedestal compared to other cabinet secretaries. I don't think there's any cabinet secretary who would begrudge the president for sending them home and leaving Mudavadi. They were not peers. He came into the coalition as a serious principle. And I think that tells you that the president struggled. He must have had a number of other cabinet secretaries that he wanted to retain, but for purposes of equality and to just allay any rank and acrimony that may, you can imagine sending Alice Wahome home and retaining Moses Kuria, or sending Owalo home and retaining someone from another region. It would have brought a lot of issues. So those are the two lenses in which I'm looking at it. There's the political aspect to it, and then there's a very pragmatic approach to it, that even if you want to retain people, the first thing is peers have to go, then you bring back on board.
Out of necessity, when Mwai Kibaki was faced with a similar situation, he retained his vice president, then Mudi Awori, and the Attorney General, Muswako. But President William Ruto found it very easy to get rid of the AG as well. Why do you think that is?
I think regarding the AG position,
that was a done deal.
Because remember, a few months ago, there was a conversation around the relationship between the president and the president and the AG's office, and the kind of advice he was getting. Remember, the AG is the secretary of the government, in a manner of speaking, of the president. So if the communication team failed, that was a good beginning to say, this is where our communication was domiciled, part of the problem, good riddance. However, going back to Mudavadi must go. That has to happen, because one, there's a question of constitutionalism. How constitutional is the Prime Cabinet Secretary's office? And we need that answer. The Law Society of Kenya needs to help us answer that question. The Chief Justice, we need commentaries from even the constitutional lawyers, because we cannot play politics anymore currently, much as this is a political process as well, more so an economic. So Mudavadi, I think what the president did, he got off of the excess baggage fast. Number two, retaining the Prime Cabinet Secretary brings a question, as you have rightly put it forth. Is he confirming the incompetence of his deputy president? That because they sit more or less do similar functions. And we, again, matters of austerity, we do not want duplication of efforts. You know, we do not want duplication of roles. We do not want wastage. If the deputy president can ably coordinate or the PSs, the permanent secretaries, why then do we need the prime cabinet secretary? So that is something we are waiting to see how it develops. But in my opinion, the prime minister, the prime cabinet secretary, Mudavadi, needs to go. Yes. We have no room right now of trying to balkanize our regions in matters 2027. 2027 will come, God willing, we will all be here, we are going to vote, we are going to have a new administration, however that will look like. But as of now, austerity 101 is all the country needs to deal with.
Okay. And as we come to the end of the conversation, I want us to go through the list of CSs that have been fired, including the Attorney General. And because even when Mwai Kibaki actually let his cabinet go, a couple of weeks later, he returned some to the very same positions that they had occupied before. So going step by step, Bona Hesbon, who do you think among this list will actually make a comeback, and why?
Well, let me just say that who do I think will not make a comeback?
Who will not come back?
Yes, yeah. You know, almost 40% wouldn't have gone through the parliamentary vetting, and it was made clear. And I think those that were adversely mentioned, there were some that were outrightly rejected by the parliamentary committee, but the plenary said, let us give the president what he wants and he can deal with that. So all the cabinet secretaries that have had integrity issues, corruption cases, either shot someone, court cases here and there, allegations of misappropriation of funds, I don't think they will come. And I think from this list, you can see the faces that have corruption written all over their faces. Then there are cabinet secretaries who have not demonstrated any prowess in managing the cabinet dockets that they've had. Some have had very big and consequential dockets, and they've not, they've flattered to deceive. And I think we can see their faces here. There is a high likelihood that they will not come back.
Who are these?
Let me not mention names, but I think
I've given you a safer option to say who would come.
I will mention the ones who will come back. Yes, the ones who are going. I think.
I think that
yes,
option.
I think it's a bit obvious the ones who are going. Yeah, but if I look at the ones who are likely to come back, in my own opinion, the Interior and National Administration Cabinet Secretary is likely to come back. I don't think he has touched anything other than the demonstrations, and you can't entirely attribute that to him. I think he's both very robust in terms of his background and how he has handled himself, and then number two, I don't think there are any corruption allegations around him. And from a political point of view, I mean, he's someone that probably would make a comeback, based on all that. Then there is, who else do I see coming back?
The tough one.
I actually just see that one. I think Kindiki. I also believe that there is a high likelihood that Honorable Soipan Tuya will come back, for the simple reason that, you look at her CV, her track record, she's not been political in whatever she's done, and she's done well, And the docket that she holds is a very critical one in the wake of, climate change and global warming. I had three in mind, three that I think would come back. So those are two, Kindiki.
Duale?
Tuya. Duale is likely to come back, and for the simple reason that he's one of the stalwarts who has been with the deputy president. The rest, I'm not so sure. The ones who've, gone out flaunting opulence here and there, thinking that, power is everything that matters, they should just go. I mean, there are heavyweights here who, if they come back, they would just put the president in a more precarious position. And I think one of them is his friend from those sides. Let me not mention it.
The one with an expensive watch.
Yes.
But Kamanya, would you be bold enough as to say who will definitely not come back?
Yeah, Ndwala will not come back. Okay. We don't need to mince words. Okay. Because, I mean, he's just not fit for public office anymore.
Despite the closeness to the president?
Yeah, we said we are not keeping friends. It is country first. Duale should not come back, in my opinion. Then secondly, I think the ministries ought to be revised. We don't need all the 22 for now. Austerity 101, we can do it around maybe 8 to 12. And
just to split these numbers with other like-minded political formations.
Well, correct.
Governments of national.
And if that's what the country needs, then we have to do so. But in terms of who may come back, I don't know whether it is pity or sympathy I'm having for Kindiki and wondering what he's going to do with all the uniforms he was donning. But I think, other than him not being able to follow through with his directive on some measures he tried to implement, case in point, the Nyayo House and passport hall hula baloos, I think he has done fairly well in matters of trying to put himself in the line and executing matters of security. He tried. He did. If I were to do a rating, he would rate higher.
Interestingly, none of you has mentioned Professor Njuguna Ndung'u.
Oh, I mean, no, please.
We need solutions, new approach to doing things.
Yes. You cannot have the same crafters of a problem become a crafter of a solution.
Okay.
I think the only person, the only person I would feel that may come back would be Kindiki. Okay. But however, all that being said, I think we must realize as a nation that these cabinet secretaries were a face of hope, and now they've become a face of despair. So bringing them back may also not augur well with the citizens.
All right. Why they had to fall is a big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation today. People power, the front page of the Standard. On the People Daily, I think they had a short headline. Good riddance. Amekuja sana, hakuna kubembeleza. Finally, on the front page of Taifa Leo, they said, afagia wote. Interesting times we're living in, dear viewers. And of course, we wait to see what happens next as the president and all like-minded formations and other interested parties come together to reconstitute the cabinet. Thank you so much, our panelists this morning, Hesbon Owila, media and political communications expert, and Josephat Kamanya, political analyst, helping us understand what this means, the step that the president has made, and what to look forward to in the coming days. Do stand by for a lot more right here on Morning Cafe. It is a Feel Good Friday. Bansi Kimuyu and Stanley Nyaringita in the house. Wakianguka nayo. My name is Freddy Ndimuli. Have a lovely day and weekend.